customer
Oh, there
decided
we
to
go.
mimic the previous one, same result. As I was finishing...
My computer crashed and I lost everything that I just did. And I was like so close to finishing. Damn it. You gotta be kidding me, man. I was so close. I was so close. That was like an hour of work.
Both the dishes, they came back with
undoing the bevel,
screaming, hollering, etc. I had a bag of goldfish crackers under the line where the plates were stacked. At that time, I had
the autosave didn't even
freaking out on me. The dish boy walked, and my deep fryer kid walked out on me. 3 waitresses, 4 customers who weren't supposed to be in the kitchen, no line cooks, and no other support staff, along with a supply that was dwindling because management didn't order enough freaking inventory. In front of them all, I picked up a large bottle of vodka, 2 liters in size, but only a quarter or so full, and drank the whole thing in front of them, yelling, "You could cook the freaking crap yourselves, you freaking idiots!" Walked out throwing the goldfish crackers at them. Figuring if the whole thing was recorded, I could make the case that there was a no one, and not one person should be held alone running a restaurant of that size. Management disagreed. I was given my last pay and told to never step foot on the premises again. 12 months later, they were closed, and I was the executive chef for the new restaurant that took its place. I no longer work for that restaurant, but for reasonable reasons. Next story. Boss found out I actually intended for my temp job to be temporary. Everyone else working there was there for the long haul, even though they were hired through a temp agency, so they got low pay and no benefits. Word got out I was actually quitting in a week. Boss told me I don't need to come next week. I was like, sweet, he wasn't mean at all about it. The company was just taking advantage of people, and I felt awesome having worked there under the assumption that they were going to take advantage of me when I was actually taking advantage of them. Everyone there, chemical packing plant, thought I was weird because I would read books on my lunch break. Next story. I created an account just to share this. When I was 16, I got my first job in a lumber mill. My job was to lift 70 feet beams with another guy to make them pile up so they could be packed and sent on their merry way. Needless to say, that was pretty demanding on the physical level, or so I still think to this day at least. Now keep in mind that I come from a small town where unemployment strives. I want to afford my stuff to let my parents breathe financially, and I want to go to college the year after. As a teenager with no social security and not part of the syndicate, I pretty much had to do everything the foreman asked me to. But see, the foreman spent his evenings, I worked 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., eating Doritos in his windowed office and watching TV. Needless to say, with our foreman being so aware of his surroundings, one of our machines jammed. What the machine did was lift a 3-meter cube of planks and drop it on a conveyor belt. Now the planks were stuck, and he asks me to unclog it all while he watches. So I'm like, alright, turn off the machine, and he tells me, yeah, it's turned off. It wasn't. As soon as I pulled on the Jenga-esque piece of wood, the machine went back into function and dropped every plank it could on my poor hand, hurting it badly. I raged inside, but I needed the money and knew that 100 people wanted my job, so I was easy to replace. So yeah, I take my break after that without removing my gloves, and I go back to work 10 minutes later. My hand hurts like a female dog, so I ask to take care of the conveyors, which isn't too hard on the physical level. Then the piling up beams part of the lumber mill clogs, because the foreman put everyone on the beginning of the line, so nobody was left to pack the product. So he asks me to come help him piling the beams. I do as best I can, but he traps my hand between beams 3 times in a row and complains that I'm too slow. I throw the beam off the conveyor, well, more like push, walk on them towards the foreman, removing my gloves ready to fight, while shouting that, quote, if his fat freaking butt would do his freaking job instead of getting fatter, eating them Doritos, and actually had a clue about anything, my hand wouldn't hurt, and etc. I don't know exactly what I was saying. I tend to have memory loss when I get angry. Next thing I know, I was going to fight that wild Snorlax and get beaten down probably, while he's like, "Hey, you're fired and come at me." But I was saved from my anger by my father, who is proud of his son working a man's man job and wanted to check on me. He worked 200 meters away in another factory. When he saw the conditions, he told me to come back immediately and leave this hellhole while shutting the Snorlax up. So as I'm coming back with my father, he drives me to the hospital instead because my hurting hand was black. I'm Caucasian. The foreman later got fired for having relations with a 14-year-old. My godfather is an accountant and he got to work there later on. He quit because, quote, he didn't do slavery. TLDR, foreman breaks my hand, craps raps on me for not working fast enough to cover for his inefficiency, saved by trainer dad who commands me to return. Foreman is actually a predator, bad man, and the place still sucks. Next story. I was the director of marketing at a mortgage company about 10 years back. We had a new hire doing our blast emailing for us, and the system was a little behind the times. It involved a lot more manual work and repetition than it should have. Basically, each account executive had a separate list of their brokers, so the temp had to start an email for each account exec, select their email list, and then paste in the subject line. Well, at some point, she accidentally copied a line from an IM conversation to her girlfriend into her clipboard, and that became the subject line that went out to about 30,000 customers with our account exec's name in the sender field. It read, "What is it about seeing girls eat kitty that turns guys on so much?" Next story. Not exactly getting fired per se, but one of my managers was removed. On with the story. The store I was working in was hiring a new manager, and a part of this process was to give them a test shift in the store to see how well they work, etc. So this new manager who knows nothing about how the particular store ran started telling people what to do, and within matters of minutes, the place was in complete disarray, and with perfect timing that the gods themselves could not muster, he starts screaming at me just as the area manager walks into the store. The area manager is the guy who hired me a couple of months before. Anyhow, he calms him down and the guy apologizes to me and all is well and good. About an hour later, these two regular customers who happen to be police officers came in and ordered their usual. But then they pulled me aside, asking about the new guy. I told them his name, and the looks on their faces were that of a cliff face. Almost all humor those guys had just drained away. They proceeded to ask me if there was somewhere private where they could talk to him, but alas, we were in the middle of a lunch rush and the only free space was the freezer. So they pulled the guy aside into the middle of a busy restaurant, asked him a few questions, then arrest him. Never saw him again. Got a call the next day from the police asking me to go through his bag. I found a black book, every page filled with people's names, credit card details, phone numbers, and addresses. Interesting day at work, I would have to say. Next story. 21 and working for a Honda seat maker. Hated the job, but the people were great. I'd planned on going to Woodstock in '99, but had used up all my vacation time. The weekend of the concert comes, and I call in sick on Friday. Go to the concert? It was amazing. At one point, I was high on shrooms and was interviewed by Ed the Sock for Much Music, but I didn't think it would make it to air. I walk into work Monday, and everyone starts cheering. Apparently, my interview went live, and everyone saw it, including the manager. He immediately pulled me into his office and asked me, "Was it worth it?" I said it was, and was escorted from the building. Next story. Got called into a former employer on a contract because they got handed the national contract to take "oh crap, please help" calls after a cyclone had wiped out a chunk of the country's northeast, followed by floods and then fires locally. They called me because I was A, on their old personnel records, and B, down as the fastest call resolver and person helper in 5 states. The difference between what they were paying me and what I made on the dole was exactly the amount it cost to keep the tank in my car for the nearly 200-mile round trip each day. No public transport options that far out in the sticks. But hey, I wasn't doing anything else and I liked helping people, even if we were working Saturdays and Sundays half the time. So one of the Sundays we're chilling there and the waste of space they assigned to be our temp supervisor for the day is telling me that corporate policy is to not change the heights on the chairs and desks we were assigned to for the day, which is crap. Because the actual corporate policy is to change the heights to avoid posture problems, and it's even optional to change them back to the original settings afterwards, which I do because I was good guy Gregging a lot of the time. When I point that out, she gets short. I tell her that if she'd bothered to read my file, she would have seen that I've spent 14 years already working at that employer, not just the week I'd been at that office. And most of that time was actually spent at corporate HQ where, you know, the policies on such things were made. So yeah, I actually did have some idea of what I was talking about, and she could avoid further embarrassment by turning around and going back to whatever else she was screwing up that day. Next day, regular supervisor, who honestly looks about 12, and it's pretty obvious this is her first managing gig, calls me over and asks me in that "let's play head games" voice, "Do you want to work here?" Turned out she was not expecting an answer of no, but seeing as how I'm driving 3 hours a day to Hicksville on minimum wage in order to boost your team's stats into first place and make the company actually able to complete its contractual obligations, and seeing as how I've actually spent more time working for this place than both you and her put together, why don't you do us both a favor and go tell yesterday's supervisor that spouting off about a policy she's never actually read just makes her look stupid and waste everyone's time. Because then if we're lucky, maybe she'll think twice or even once before doing it again. Instant crap can. but it wasn't as if going back on the dole was going to make me have less money in my pocket. It was just going to give me back 55 hours of free time a week, which may have been why I didn't really have a problem speaking truth to power in that circumstance. I feel like people like those crap managers definitely need someone like you who has nothing to lose from talking back to, talk back every now and then. Like, even just a realistic standpoint, it's hard for them to expect real feedback when real feedback could get people in trouble, Didn't sound like these are the type to listen to real feedback though, so, oh well. Next story. Not me, a guy I know. Wouldn't call him a friend, he's a bit of a grub, but the story is funny. Woman walks in and says, "My son wants this soccer game for Christmas, but I don't know what it's called." Guy says, "Why, that would almost 100% certainly be FIFA 11, which just came out and has been hugely popular." To which this lady simply says, "Not sure." And this guy convinces her for some time until she agrees to purchase as a surprise for her boy. So he says, well, what console is this for?" She says, "Dunno." He asks helpful questions like, do you know what it looks like? Are there any of these names familiar? Etc. She says, "Wouldn't have a clue." To which he simply responded, "You're a freaking clown." Woman complains and insta-fired. Next story. I'm not sure if this is relevant because I haven't worked for someone else. Instead, run my own small business. A guy called me, saying he recently lost a job and has 2 kids and that he badly needs a job to support his family. I instantly hired him without even interviewing him and any investigation to why he was fired from the previous job. 2 months later, one of my staff found him saving my customers' data in his personal diary and sharing it with one of my competitors. I was at home almost asleep when a coworker called me to tell me that. Without even taking a bath and having breakfast, I rushed to the office, grabbed him by the collar and said, "You mother effer, you betrayed me, get lost. If you weren't a father of 2 small kids, I would have put you behind bars." Next story. Worked for this place called the Hat Club years ago. Anyway, I was working at this other hat shop, a hattery type shop, not a ball cap store, and was looking for a second job to supplement my income. I was homeless at the time. When I applied at the Hat Club, they decided they wanted me to work as a manager and wanted me to quit my other job so I could work for them full time. I was a little flabbergasted, but I accepted. I trained, busted my butt, and got my store open. Even with what they were paying me, I still couldn't afford a place to live. It was San Diego after all. Everything is going peachy. I work my butt off and everything is wonderful. Fast forward to a few months in, when the guy who hired me wants to take all of the employees at my store to a casino in LA called Pachanga. We went and had dinner. It was nice for a while. Then we sat down in this lounge area. My manager started pestering me to drink. Alcohol. Since I was homeless at the time, I stayed away from alcohol on principle and wouldn't drink it when he asked. He kept bugging me and bugging me and bugging me. I said no every time, but he kept going. I finally had enough. I got up and went somewhere else without so much as a word. Want some money, too. My manager is frantically texting me, I know, homeless guy with a cell phone, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, to come back, and that's okay, etc. I finally come back and we end the evening. I ride with my coworker and her husband back home in silence. After that, my boss started getting super weird. He actually told me that after what happened that night at Pachanga, he was losing faith in me and my ability to manage the store. His demands on myself and my time became increasingly overbearing and ridiculous. He'd say that I was full of excuses, etc. I stopped caring at some point. On New Year's Day, 2006, the trolleys and buses were delayed a lot because of the holidays. I was going to be late as hell and there was no getting around it. One of my employees called and asked if I could use a ride, and he came and got me. We got to the store about 30 minutes late. I called my boss to tell him what was going on and why it was going on, and his response to me was, "Well, it's like I said, OP. It's always some excuse." I hung up on him. We opened the store and he kept calling to talk to me. I hung up on him repeatedly. I would not talk to him. I just picked the handset up and put it back down again. After all this, I finally asked my employee if he wanted to go home early that day. He responded yes, and I said if he just gave me a ride to my parents' house about half an hour away, I'd close up and we could go. He agreed, so I emailed my boss a curt letter explaining that I was done with him, tendered a resignation through fax to the home office detailing exactly what happened, and locked up. We went to the security office and I dropped off the store keys and we blew that freaking popsicle stand. My boss called me sometime after I got home to my parents' house. No one else was home and I had a key. I ignored the call and he left me a message saying I would be arrested for trespassing if I ever came back, but not one crap was given. After that, I asked my dad if I could stay there because I was tired of being homeless, and he agreed. I was able to get back on my feet. I'm no longer homeless. Next story. Worked in an extended family-owned bookstore for a short bit. They were super nice, paid above minimum wage, enrolled us and paid for, I think, it's been a long time, in a health plan, but the job was kinda dull, and I had a lot of unsupervised free time. Not a good combo. rivals. To do this, I was set apart from the other booksellers and left in a drafty room adjacent to the loading dock. There was one other guy there, the guy who sent out the phone orders. That dude was weird. Like I said above, I had lots of time to work and was unsupervised for most of it. The actual intake of the books and data entry was always accurate, so no one bothered me. It also gave me lots of time to poke around on their archaic, even for 96, computer system. It was a modified point-of-sale system that had a bit extra. Specifically, it had an in-house email system that I kept trying to access. The logins were all 3 characters long, and I figured these were the initials of each member of the owning family. Turns out I was correct about this, but I couldn't figure out anyone's password to get in. Even taking all of the personal family info I could glean about them, I was locked out. Until one day, being the master hacker that I am, I came across the non-password protected password page. I was in. Now, when I tell this story to people who can see my face and know me, I tell them that I monitored the email accounts for a while before starting the following. Here's my admission that I did no such thing. Instead, I went into everyone's account, noticed it looked like it was empty, and set up accounts for myself and 2 coworkers. Boy, it was fun. We would just message back and forth during the shift, no biggie. We kept into our 3 accounts for a couple of days, and then I screwed up. One of the dormant accounts was for a guy who was basically the floor manager, though he had no such title. Only family members actually had titles. He had been with the store for years. Well, a new chain was opening a nice store in a mall in town, and he got the GM job there. Word had just filtered around to us plebes that he was leaving, and I made the grand decision to write a going-away email from him to the members of the owning family. The gist of the email was that he was ungrateful for anything they had ever done for him, that work was a hellhole, and it ended with the infamous line, "God damn all you family names to hell." I sent the email to every family member and immediately sent a message to my friends to go look at the family members' accounts. I had long since shared the login info. We had a laugh, and I came to my senses shortly after. I went back into the system and deleted the email out of everyone's inbox, or so I thought. Fast forward to maybe a week later, and on entering the store, I'm summoned to the office to the oldest family member, the one who started the business 50 years prior, and was now basically a figurehead patriarch. The other immediate family members were in his office as well. I really had no idea what to think. I did know members of the extended family before I worked there, so I wasn't uncomfortable, just perplexed. It's not long before one of them mentions how they were looking at starting to hook their computer system up and set up online stuff, and oh yeah, real email. Oh crap. Poker face, but oh crap. I apparently left one of the family members' inboxes undeleted. The email was in there. I was asked about it, specifically the last line. I'm looking at the old man in the eyes, telling him it was a joke, just a joke. And all he's hearing is screw you, screw you, screw you. Fired. With a vengeance. Didn't even get walked out, just sort of dismissed and left to my own devices. Female coworker, whom I also added in, given 2 weeks notice of her impending joblessness. I apologize to her every time I see her. She still thinks it's hilarious. Male coworker, nada. Can't figure that one out. TLDR. Even when joking, saying God should condemn a whole family to hell is frowned upon. Well, OP, I can't say you were in the right here. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes, I guess. Next story. At the college I went to, I broke a chair by accident at work one night. I went ahead and threw it away in a dumpster and cleaned up the mess and thought nothing of it. The next day I worked, I'd forgotten about it, and the university police wanted to have me arrested for destroying property and endangering the lives of others. Needless to say, I was fired, but didn't get charged with anything, but was required to pay back the cost of the chair and do 30 hours of community service. Next story. Working at a Subway in rural Wyoming for tuition money. A local rancher comes in and asks me what the Philly cheesesteak sandwich tastes like. I tell him I haven't personally ordered the sandwich, but I've heard rave reviews and it was ordered fairly often in the shop. He said no. Well, why haven't you tried it then? I politely explained that I'd been a vegetarian for years and that the only sandwich I eat there is the Veggie Delight. A few days later, I get called into the boss's office. He lists off a large list of reasons why they were letting me go, most of which were complete fallacies, and then ended with, not to mention that we got an angry phone call from a local rancher saying you were rude to his way of life by talking about your vegetarianism. So we're letting you go. He was very careful to say that my vegetarianism wasn't the reason for being fired, but I'm pretty sure that was it. I worked harder than anyone else in that joint because I had something to prove. Good riddance to that job, though. Next story. Not me, but my girlfriend. We lived in a mostly upper white middle class neighborhood. She was working at Subway. One female dog woman comes in with her kids. She, my girlfriend, apparently slightly messed up her order, and she flipped crap. Starts screaming about how her husband made $300,000 a year, a lie, and how she doesn't have to deal with this. Got into a catfight with my girlfriend. A single cop shows up and breaks up the fight. The manager fires her for, quote, harassing customers. And better yet, we drove by the jerk lady's house and it was being foreclosed. Karma is a female dog. Well, I think one of the biggest things we've learned from this thread is that they started it really doesn't work when talking to an employer. I feel like if a customer starts swinging on you, you don't have much choice, though, to be fair. Anyway, the stories are getting lower and lower quality as I go on, to be honest, so we're gonna cut it here, and I think this is the right length anyway, so hopefully we're good. I'd like to thank you all so much for watching. Have you guys ever been fired from a job? What happened? Let me know in the comments and I'll give them a read. For now, though, I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I will see you in the next one.
Oh. Those. And those. Okay. Oh wait, no, yep, no, wrong. Those are correct, sorry, whoops. What? Oh, that's already aligned. What am I doing? Something went weird. Alrighty, I think I'm gonna go shower. Save it here. I'll be back.